Imagine it's 6 in the morning. The sun hasn't come up yet. You're standing in a kitchen that's colder than it should be because you couldn't afford enough coal to keep the stove running through the night. Your youngest is still asleep. Your oldest is already awake, sitting at the table, not saying anything, just waiting. And you open the cupboard. You already know what's in there. You knew last night. You knew when you went to bed. There's half a loaf of bread going stale at the edges. There's a jar with maybe 2 tablespoons of butter left. There's a bottle of ketchup, and there is nothing else. No eggs, no cheese, no meat, nothing. And your child is sitting at that table, waiting, and you are the only thing standing between that child and hunger. So you pick up the knife, and you make something out of nothing, because that is what you do. That is what you have always done. What you make in that moment isn't a recipe. It isn't a meal in any way that a cookbook would recognize, but it is an act of love so fierce and so desperate that it should have been remembered forever. It wasn't. We forgot. We were told to forget, and the people who benefited most from our forgetting made absolutely certain that we did. This is the story of the sandwiches that fed America when America had nothing. This is the story of the mothers who invented them, the corporations that buried them, the government that ignored them, and the generation that carried the memory of hunger so deep inside themselves that they never spoke of it out loud, not once, not to their children, not to their grandchildren, not to anyone. But the sandwiches remember, and today, so will you. The year is 1931. 2 years have passed since the stock market collapsed in a single catastrophic week in October of 1929. In those 2 years, everything that Americans believed about their country, about hard work and reward, about tomorrow being better than today, has been quietly, systematically destroyed. 16 million people are unemployed. That number sounds abstract until you understand what it means on the ground. It means that in Detroit, entire city blocks of factory workers have lost everything. It means that in Oklahoma, farmers who worked the same land as their fathers and their fathers' fathers are watching that land turn to dust and blow away in great black clouds that blot out the afternoon sun. It means that outside of every major American city, there are tent cities. People call them Hoovervilles, named after the president they blame for their suffering. Families are living in structures made of cardboard and scavenged wood, cooking over open fires, standing in lines for hours for a bowl of soup. And in the middle of all of this, in every small house and crowded apartment and canvas tent from California to the Carolinas, a woman is standing in a kitchen trying to solve an equation that has no solution. She has children who need to eat. She has almost nothing to feed them. And she has to figure it out by tomorrow morning and the morning after that and every morning after that for as long as this darkness lasts. What she figures out will change American food forever. What she figures out will be stolen from her, and we are only now beginning to understand how much we lost.
Let's start with the sugar sandwich, because it's the one that gets people the most. Butter on white bread sprinkled with granulated sugar. That's it. That was lunch for millions of children across the Dust Bowl states during the worst years of the Depression. Children carried them to school wrapped in wax paper, embarrassed by them, hiding them, eating them in corners away from the children whose families still had something left. The sugar crystals crunched against soft bread, the butter held everything together, and that was the whole meal. A pound of sugar cost 5 cents in 1932. 5 cents. That was the math that determined what a child ate. Now here is where it gets interesting. In 2018, food scientists at the University of Georgia ran a detailed analysis of Depression-era nutrition, looking specifically at what these improvised meals actually did to the human body. And what they found stopped them cold. The combination of animal fat from butter and rapidly metabolizing simple sugar created what scientists call rapid energy absorption. The body could break it down fast and distribute fuel to the brain and muscles almost immediately. For a child who was chronically underfed, whose body was running on empty every single day, this particular combination of ingredients meant the difference between staying awake through the school day and collapsing. It meant the difference between being able to focus and sitting in a fog of exhaustion that teachers mistook for laziness or stupidity. Your great-grandmother didn't know the science. She had no way of knowing the science. She was standing in a kitchen with 5 cents and a hungry child, and she made the best decision available to her with the information she had. And she was accidentally, precisely, brilliantly correct. The scientists needed 80 years in a university laboratory to confirm what she figured out in a cold kitchen at 6 in the morning. But the sugar sandwich was one of the gentler ones. Not every family had butter. Not every family had sugar. And as the Depression deepened and stretched from months into years, the kitchens got barer and the improvisation got more extreme. In the coal fields of Pennsylvania and West Virginia, where coal mining families lived entirely on company wages paid in company script that could only be spent at company stores at company prices, butter was a luxury that most households couldn't consistently afford. So they used lard. Pure rendered pig fat, sold in large tin buckets for 30 cents each, and a single bucket could last a family an entire month. Mothers spread it thick on day-old bread, pressed from yesterday's loaf that was already going dry at the edges. They sprinkled it with salt. They handed it to husbands who were about to go underground for 12-hour shifts in the dark, swinging pickaxes in narrow tunnels with bad air and worse lighting, hauling coal out of the earth for wages that were already barely enough and getting worse. A single lard sandwich contained nearly 900 calories. 900! The kind of dense, immediate energy that a body doing brutal physical labor in freezing temperatures absolutely requires to keep functioning. And children ate lard sandwiches too, packed into their school bags alongside whatever else the kitchen could provide, their growing bodies desperate for any caloric input at all. We've spent the last half-century being told that fat is the enemy. Saturated fat clogs arteries. Animal fat causes heart disease. Lard is a relic of ignorance. But lard is a natural fat. Humans have been eating rendered animal fat in one form or another for literally 10,000 years across every culture on every continent. It is what our digestive systems evolved to process. And then in the 1940s, vegetable shortening arrived in gleaming white packaging with cheerful labels and promises of modern cleanliness and scientific progress. Crisco, clean, refined, civilized. Lard disappeared from American kitchens so fast it was almost as if it had never been there. Mothers who had cooked with lard their entire lives switched almost overnight because the advertising told them that switching was what intelligent modern women did. The processed vegetable shortening that replaced lard, the partially hydrogenated oils that filled American kitchens and restaurant fryers for the next 60 years, we now know causes cardiovascular disease at rates that natural animal fats do not. The FDA banned partially hydrogenated oils from the American food supply in 2018. Progress, they called it, in 1945, when they took away the lard. We are still paying for that progress today. And then there's the ketchup sandwich. 2 slices of bread, a thick smear of ketchup. When the icebox held nothing but condiments and the grocery money had run out 3 days before the end of the week, mothers in cities like Detroit and Pittsburgh and Cleveland reached for whatever was left on the shelf. A bottle of Heinz cost 12 cents and lasted 2 weeks if you were careful. The tomatoes provided vitamin C. The vinegar aided digestion, and the flavor, sharp and sweet and acidic, was strong enough to convince a hungry stomach that something real was happening. Children who ate ketchup sandwiches understood without anyone explaining it to them that things were very bad. But they ate. They went to school. They came home. They did their chores. And somewhere in that thin red layer of ketchup between 2 slices of bread was just enough fuel to make all of that possible. We look at the ketchup sandwich today and we see poverty. We see desperation. We see something almost too sad to contemplate. But what we should see, what we owe it to those children to see, is resourcefulness, is love under impossible pressure, is a mother who found a way when there was no way. Now here is where this story takes a turn that most food histories never talk about, because what happened in those Depression-era kitchens wasn't just about what people ate. It was about what people knew. It was about a body of practical knowledge accumulated across generations, tested by experience, refined by necessity, that certain very powerful interests were actively working to destroy. While mothers across America were grinding their own peanut butter from fresh roasted peanuts, food scientists working decades later found something astonishing. The homemade version contained nearly twice the protein of the commercial peanut butter you buy today at the grocery store. Twice. Because homemade peanut butter is peanuts, ground peanuts. That's the whole recipe. The commercial version you buy today is peanuts plus sugar plus salt plus stabilizers plus emulsifiers plus preservatives plus whatever else the manufacturer decided to add to extend the shelf life, improve the texture, reduce the cost, and maximize the profit margin. All of those additions displace protein. Every gram of sugar that goes into that jar is a gram of protein that doesn't. Your great-grandmother's peanut butter made her children stronger. The version in the plastic jar with the cartoon characters on the label makes the manufacturer richer. But that's only part of the story, because the food companies didn't just reformulate the products, they went after the knowledge itself. In 1931, the single worst year of the Great Depression, when 16 million people were unemployed and families were living in cardboard cities, General Mills introduced Bisquick. And with it came something more dangerous than a product. It came with a campaign. Betty Crocker, a name you absolutely recognize, was not a person. She was a fictional character, invented whole cloth by a marketing department, given a warm radio voice and a trusted friend personality, and deployed across the American airwaves with a single purpose: to convince American women that their own knowledge was insufficient, that their mothers' recipes were outdated, that the way forward was through the package, not through the hands. "You are too busy to cook properly," the message said, wrapped in warmth and encouragement and the language of liberation. "Let us help you. Let us take care of it. Trust us." What the advertisements never mentioned, what couldn't be mentioned because it would have destroyed the entire campaign, was homemade biscuits made from flour and fat and baking powder cost a small fraction of what Bisquick cost. And they tasted better, and making them required a skill that once learned stayed with you forever and could be passed to your children and your children's children at no extra cost. In the span of a single generation, an architecture of practical knowledge that had been built up over centuries: how to stretch a cut of meat across 6 meals, how to make bread from almost nothing, how to feed 10 people on $1, how to use every part of every ingredient so that nothing was ever wasted, was systematically dismantled and replaced with brand loyalty and package instructions. Our great-grandmothers knew how to make something from nothing. Their children learned how to read a label, and the food industry built fortunes on that exchange, and they have been collecting on that exchange every single day since. But I haven't told you about the darkest sandwich yet. I've been building toward it, because some things need context before they can be properly understood. There is a sandwich in this story that has no recipe. It requires no ingredients, no preparation, no skill. It asks nothing of the cook, because there is no cook. There is only hunger, and bread, and the specific quality of silence that fills a room when everyone at the table knows that what is being served is not enough, and there is nothing anyone can do about it. 2 slices of bread, nothing between them. You wish you had some meat. You wish you had some cheese. You wish you had butter or ketchup or even mustard scraped from the bottom of a near-empty jar. You wish you had anything at all to put between these 2 slices of bread, but you don't, and your children are sitting at the table, and this is what there is. They called it the wish sandwich. Families who ate wish sandwiches did not talk about them afterwards,
We live now in the most food-abundant moment in human history.
Walk into any grocery store in America, any store, even a small one, and you are surrounded by more variety, more choice, more sheer volume of food than any human being who lived before the 20th century could have imagined. Every cuisine on Earth is available within 30 miles of where you're sitting right now. You can have food from the other side of the planet delivered to your door in under an hour. And yet 1 in 8 Americans goes to bed hungry tonight. 1 in 8, in the most food-abundant nation in the history of the world. The children eating Wish sandwiches today don't call them that. They don't have a name for them. Nobody gave them a name. Nobody made a documentary about their grandmother's kitchens. Nobody wrote a food history celebrating the creativity of their mother's survival. The women who invented these sandwiches, who turned lard and salt and day-old bread into 900 calories, who stretched a single jar of peanut butter across weeks of school lunches, who figured out that cold pinto beans mashed with a fork and spread on bread provided exactly the combination of nutrients that a body running on empty actually needed, those women were not food scientists. They were not chefs. They did not have nutrition degrees or recipe blogs or monetized social media accounts. They had empty cupboards and children who needed to eat. And in the space between those two facts, they created something extraordinary. We've been taught to see their food as poverty food, embarrassing food, the kind of food that progress was supposed to make unnecessary. We've been taught to distrust simple ingredients and celebrate complexity, to see a can of beans as deprivation and a $40 tasting menu as sophistication, to believe that the answer to every nutritional question is somewhere in a supplement bottle or a wellness app or a new book by someone with a medical degree.